A federal budget and policy bill was signed into law by President Trump last Friday. The bill was, among other things, extending a tax cut that was set to expire. Also included cuts to Medicaid and food stamp programs for those on low incomes. Joining us now from Washington, Arizona Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari. You're back in D.C., correct, Congresswoman?
I am, but I'll be back in Phoenix tomorrow, so I'm very excited to be home.
Very good. It was good to have you back, but I want to talk to you now because we want to get you as soon as possible after the signing and the passing of this reconciliation bill. Lots to say about it. Obviously, you have had lots to say about it. What do you say about it now?
Thank you for having me, Ted. There is no way to sugarcoat it. This Trump budget bill is going to be devastating for Arizona. There are 365,000 Arizonans who rely on Medicaid, who rely on SNAP and food assistance, who are going to be impacted by this bill. This bill is also a massive job killer for Arizona. I have talked to everyone from labor union leaders, including conservative labor union leaders, electricians, construction workers, those who are building the clean energy future in Arizona, who do not understand how this could be possible. And finally, the bill raises the deficit, and it's very alarming to me to see that colleagues from the other side of the aisle who have long been financially conservative proponents and proponents of reducing the deficit that our country has just voted on a bill that will raise this country's deficit by $3.3 trillion. Finally, for Arizona, the impact is increased funding to ICE in my district in particular, but really in districts across the entire state. I've talked to small business owners, to school leaders, principals, teachers who have had their entire apparatus completely devastated. People are in fear because of the ICE raids that are happening, because families are being separated from one another, because immigrants from all backgrounds are being targeted. And this bill increases funding for the Department of Homeland Security by $175 billion. So ripping away healthcare from Arizonans just to funnel more money into family separation and detentions.
Let's start with the healthcare aspect of this. Republicans will say that they're not cutting. They are just making sure that able-bodied folks who should be working and receiving Medicaid are those that are receiving Medicaid. Not, I think I've heard the quote more than once, those sitting on the couch.
Yeah, that's just not true. And as much as the Republicans, especially the ones from Arizona, want to keep repeating lies, the nonpartisan Congressional Research Office has made very clear the numbers in each district. Juan Ciscomani's district, David Schweikert's district, Eli Crane's district, Abe Hamadeh's district, all will have thousands upon thousands of constituents who will be completely thrown off of Medicaid. Then on top of that, you have the impacts on rural hospitals and community health centers that have made very clear to us that they will have to shut their doors because of the Medicaid cuts. We already are in a healthcare crisis in Arizona. We don't have enough doctors. We do not have enough access, especially for working class people in our state. And we're going to see the impacts of that as a result of this bill. So they can keep lying to people, but the impacts will be clear. This bill is the most unprecedented transfer of wealth from the working class and the poor to the bottom, or the top 1% in this country.
But again, real quickly, they say those folks still qualify. Those who qualify now will qualify then.
It's not true.
So you're saying that's just not true.
What the data shows.
Okay, because they're saying that it's just going to be more difficult to prove, and there is an argument against this, saying that it's so difficult to document all these things, document your efforts in getting a job, document all this, that, and the other, that will be so confusing, that will knock people off the rolls.
I've talked to physicians in our state. I've talked to hospital associations. I've talked to medical groups, community health center, firms in my district. All of them have sounded the alarm on this. There was an excellent op-ed recently by Dr. Vishal Verma. He's a CD1 resident and a physician who has sounded the alarm for many, many months now on this and is gathering physicians on this issue. And all of them have made very clear that not only will patients be thrown off of Medicaid, but they will likely have to shut their doors as a result.
What are you hearing from your Republican colleagues there on Capitol Hill, in the House here? I mean, you talked about the increasing the debt and how they're so against the debt, and yet the CBO says 3.3 over 10 years. That's a lot of an increase. And what are you hearing from? How are they justifying this to you, a fellow congressperson?
They, The reality is, I think there's a lot of fear of Donald Trump. He has an ironclad grip on the party. And what I have seen in my first 6 months in Congress is that my Republican colleagues are willing to do whatever it is, even if it means sacrificing their own seats in Congress, because they are so afraid of the retaliation from this administration. That is just the truth of the matter. On the final days of the negotiations last week, many of them, including Representative Siscomani, had said that they wouldn't vote for Medicaid cuts. He wrote letters. I have met with organizations that said he assured them of this. And then they talked to the president, and suddenly everything changes. There were a number of Republicans who went to the White House who, in the final hours, deals were cut, promises were made. Senator Murkowski is a great example of that. She was able to carve out some specific promises for Alaska. And that is what is happening, unfortunately, as a result of the way the president is operating. And it's really disappointing to see that Republicans are not willing to stand up for their own constituents. They're willing to sacrifice their own constituents' health and safety and prosperity and economic futures at the behest of the president, all for tax breaks for people like him and his family, and for people that donated to his campaign, billionaires who donated to his campaign and got him the presidency.
Last point on this before we get to Iran, because I want to get to the U.S. bombing of Iran, but I do want to get to the idea, and you mentioned ICE and the increased funding for immigration enforcement. Republicans will say this is what people voted them into office. They voted Donald Trump into office just for this reason, maybe more than any other. Immigration enforcement, do they have a point?
I think many people are regretting their vote on this issue. We've already seen it with a variety of immigrant communities across the country, Venezuelan Americans who didn't think that their TPS status would be affected, and now they're seeing their family members, lose that status. We're seeing that with Cuban Americans. We're seeing examples across the board and viral videos across the board of families who said they voted for Trump, but said he said he was going to go after serious criminals, right? That was he also talked about mass deportations, but I think many people really honed in on this message of going after serious criminals. The truth of the matter is that those who are being rounded up by ICE, 65% of them have no criminal record whatsoever. These are just people who have a variety of documentation statuses, many of whom have tried to come here legally through the right processes and are now being rounded up. It's also really important to note that Stephen Miller, who is advising Donald Trump on these issues, has set preposterous quotas that they want to meet, including they want to deport 3 million people per year. That means we have to expand our current ICE detention capacity 4 times over. That means private prison companies like Geo Group and CoreCivic are already making billions of dollars to detain and deport people. Yes, I believe there are some people in this country who truly want immigrants of all backgrounds deported, and it's very unfortunate. But many Americans thought that the administration was truly going to go after criminals, and that just has not been the case.
We've only got a couple of minutes left here, and I want to talk to you about the U.S. military strikes on Iran. You're an Iranian American. Your parents immigrated from Iran. Did the U.S. do the right thing in going after Iran's nuclear program?
So my perspective on this issue comes from is looking at 2 components. First and foremost, is the president's action legal? Should he have asked for congressional authorization? And my belief, based on the Constitution, is that the president should have briefed Congress and asked for authorization before taking any sort of unilateral military action. Second, we need to understand the intelligence. We need to understand what the goal of this was. Thus far, there has been no clear response from the administration backed by intelligence to show that we have actually postponed the creation of Iran's nuclear program and any sort of advancement towards a nuclear weapon in any sort of meaningful way. So my concern, and the concern of many of my colleagues at this point, is that there is actually a high likelihood that what Donald Trump's actions have done in this case is further embolden the Islamic Republic regime, which is very different from the Iranian people. Iranian people are vehemently against their government. But what could have happened now is that the regime may be further emboldened. They could run faster towards a nuclear weapon. They are less inclined to pursue negotiations and actually come to a diplomatic solution. And that is the issue when you have a president that is conducting foreign policy via social media. I have never seen such erratic behavior over the course of 10 days. The president tweeted everything from telling a city of 10 million people in Tehran to evacuate when they obviously have nowhere to go, to threatening regime change and saying he's going to bomb the country, to calling for peace, all within 72 hours. That's not how foreign policy should ever be conducted in the United States.
Representative Yasmin Ansari, always a pleasure. Good to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. Certainly appreciate it.